Hey, indie filmmakers, I'm Griffin Hammond.
I'm Nick Bodmer, and today I help Griffin understand why you would possibly need 3 cameras on a new iPhone.
Plus, I am in France, so I'll talk about how I packed everything for this trip and how I managed when the airline lost some of my film equipment.
That's not good.
That's not good.
But we're not going to talk about that yet, because it's iPhone time.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my new iPhone 11 Pro at the camera.
Oh, you already have it?
I have it in hand, my friend, in hand. Yes, I went with the iPhone 11 Pro, not the Max version, so the smaller one this time. I go back and forth every year between the small and the large one. And this is small year time, because I get sick of it being so big. And it's got 3 cameras on the back.
Already, this is enlightening because I am super ignorant on this topic. Somehow, I knew that Apple they released this new phone. I knew that it had 3 cameras on it, but I didn't even know what it was called. I didn't know it was called the iPhone 11 Pro.
Well, it's Pro, Griffin, and we are professionals, so obviously we have to have the Pro phone. Wouldn't you agree?
Of course.
So Apple released 3 phones. The iPhone 11, full stop, and then the iPhone 11 Pro and the iPhone 11 Pro Max.
Oh, okay.
3 new phones coming out.
So wait, did you get the giant one or the...
I did not get the giant one. I had the giant one last year. I had the iPhone XS Max, the Max being the big one.
And
so last year's phones are the
Which of these 3 phones have 3 cameras?
The Pros. So the Pro, iPhone 11 Pro, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max. They're the exact same phone, except for the fact that one is bigger than the other. Every other feature is exactly the same. And then there's the iPhone 11, which does not have 3 cameras. It only has 2.
Okay. So that's like my camera. I have the XS Max, which has 2 cameras on it. And I understand that as one of them is a telephoto, and one of them is like 2x the other one, so you can shoot your wide stuff, you can shoot your close-ups, and then does it also use that information for depth mapping?
It does. So you know that on your iPhone XS you can do that portrait mode where it does the kind of fake background blur. You can only do that on the zoomed in camera, the telephoto lens, because it uses the information from the wider camera to determine depth through parallax. So what's cool on this camera is I have a telephoto, I have the wide, and those are exactly the same field of view as what's on your camera. And then I also have an ultra-wide lens. So pulled way out. And that does add a nice feature, which is portrait mode in the normal wide lens, because there is a wider lens for which it to determine depth in that. So that's handy.
Oh, okay. Do you know why does it need a wider lens to determine depth? I guess it just has to be able to cover the entire field of view.
Exactly. If you tried to use on your phone, you can't do portrait mode because the second lens doesn't see everything that the lens you're shooting on does, so it can't determine depth for everything in the frame.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more
technical reasons than that, but
I had seen people shooting these super wide shots, and you see some, like the standard shot of your own legs when you're like laying down, and some people were saying like, whoa, it looks like I'm so tall now, or buildings you can finally get super wide shots. But I actually this is how ignorant I was about the subject. I actually thought that they just replaced the widest lens on the iPhone with an even wider lens. I didn't realize they just gave it a whole new one.
Yeah, so 3 lenses, it's pretty cool. And I think it's going to be a learning experience for people trying to use this ultra-wide. You probably would be better than most, because I think, ultra-wides aren't necessarily for like getting more in the frame, although they do that, but more for kind of putting you in the action, right? You want to get like real close to stuff and then shoot with the ultra-wide, and that's kind of an interesting way to shoot. So that's cool. Yeah,
my 8 to 18 millimeter on Panasonic cameras is one of my favorite lenses to shoot with, because it's kind of awkwardly wide like that, and so it's great for shooting a building. It's kind of amazing how much sky you get in a shot like that. And yeah, when you get close, you can really exaggerate the distance of things, which is fun to play with.
And a bunch of the reviews have gone. The camera is fairly dramatically improved over the XS. Even the standard lenses, the apertures have gotten better, and it seems like the sensor, especially on the normal wide lens, is dramatically improved. A lot better detail and clarity. There's been some big upgrades to 4K video recording. So I think you're familiar with the feature on your phone where it will do automatic HDR on 4K 30 video footage.
Yeah.
But when you went to 4K 60, you lost that feature. So you have to shoot in 4K 30 on your phone. On this phone, it does do it on 4K 60, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Image stabilization is better. So here's the aperture. So the ultra wide is in f2.4, the wide is in f1.8 now, and the telephoto is in f2.0.
I don't have a great sense of what those apertures mean on that size sensor, but
well,
I imagine are they bigger than before? I mean, they're more open.
Yes, I think the wide was like a 2.0, so 2.0 to 1.8, not a big jump, but the telephoto went from like a 2.4 to a 2.0, which you're better at this than I am, but I think that's a non-trivial jump.
It sounds like a half stop or something, so or maybe it's a third stop. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it means more light gets onto the sensor, and so it should perform better in low light.
And then they've introduced a new feature kind of coming after the Google night shot mode. Have you ever seen that? The Google's night shot where it like basically can see in the dark.
Is that like some sort of AI thing?
That's
I've
how
seen the
Google is
result.
doing it is with artificial intelligence. Yeah, and it goes up to the cloud and does it. Apple has introduced a new night shot. I think it's called Night Shot. I can't remember mode, and it works really well. But it's a bracketing mode. It takes like 9 exposures of various lengths, and then it does use onboard artificial intelligence to combine those. And the results are excellent. So you look at the side by sides of the reviews, people shooting at night with the last year's phone and this phone. It's dramatic, but it still looks like nighttime, and it looks appropriately moody and things like that. So it's very cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then they added about 4 hours of battery life, which is great.
Hey, do you want to see? I'm going to send you a picture. Do you want to see my new 3 lens camera?
I do. Oh. Yes. Actually, it looks pretty similar. I'm assuming you're going to put it on the screen right now. So
if you're watching the video, you're seeing it. If you're listening, I'll throw this in the show notes at Hey.film. This is a picture that we took in.
Is that
This was an antique shop in Spain. This is like a big old filmmaking camera, but it has one of those turret lens systems so you can switch between.
That's funny. It really does look. I mean, it's in the same triangle pattern as on the iPhone. That's funny.
Well, it's funny because we've been doing this for a long time. This idea that you probably need 3 focal lengths. You need a wide shot, a medium shot, and a close up. And although on the iPhone it's kind of like extreme wide, and medium. You don't really have a close up camera.
So you didn't watch the keynote then, obviously, since you know nothing about these phones.
Right.
They had a really cool demo by Filmic Pro, the people who make the kind of professional video app on the iPhone.
Right. And generally, if you're going to shoot video on an iPhone, Filmic Pro lets you max out all the features you'd expect on a kind of a DSLR.
Yeah, it was really awesome. And what they introduced was multi-camera recording.
Oh, I heard about this.
Yeah, so you'll have the ability to, you bring up Filmic Pro, you can see all 4 cameras on this because, you've got the 3 forward-facing cameras and then the selfie camera. You can see all 4 at once, and you can choose 2 to record. So you can't record from all 4 at once. That's an insane amount of 4K bandwidth, as you can imagine, pumping out of those. But you can choose 2 and record. I think you're limited to 1080p in terms of recording, but you can imagine shooting with the wide and the ultra wide, or the wide and the telephoto, and being able to basically get 2 shots at once, which I think is going to be really awesome. And you'll be happy to know that feature is coming to your phone when Filmic Pro updates later this year. So that will be supported on the iPhone XS and XS Max, the XR, the new iPhone 11s, and the latest iPad Pro, actually. So
did you say 4 cameras? Did you say the front-facing camera too?
Yep.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the kind, you can imagine if you're trying to interview somebody and you might want a shot of yourself as well, asking questions or something like that.
The immediate issue I can think of is that if I set this up on a tripod or something, or figure out a creative way to mount my iPhone, I'm probably going to frame up the wide shot differently than I would frame up the portrait shot. I think naturally, if I frame up the portrait shot correctly with kind of a rule of thirds, I'm probably going to end up with a wide shot that's tilted up a little bit too high, and the subject is probably in the middle of the frame rather than...
But you can imagine it being, I mean, even for the type of interview work you do, having a free second shot just in case, is never a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not the primary shot. So I think that's
very
cool.
Interesting, yeah.
So yeah, the only reason you would upgrade to this phone is if you want the better camera. Both getting the extra lens and the existing lenses are better, and it has better battery life. Other than that, it's basically identical to last year. No, those are fairly major upgrades, and you know me, I'm going to upgrade every year, probably no matter what. But I'm going to guess you're not going to rush out and buy a new iPhone since you seem to hang on to them like a reasonable human being for a little more than a year.
I think last year I got the iPhone XS Max, and I was excited about some of the new features, the Face ID, the better cameras. But for me, it was an upgrade, I think, from 3 generations ago. I think I had a 6S before that.
And the other question people might ask is, do I go for the iPhone 11 or the 11 Pro? Because the 11 is actually a very compelling phone.
Yeah.
It's in between the sizes of the Pro and the Pro Max. It has all the same features, except it doesn't have the third camera. But what they've done is, it's not the telephoto and the wide. They eliminated the telephoto, so you get the wide and the ultra wide.
That's probably why I thought that there was,
Yeah, that's the iPhone 11. It's the wide and the ultra wide, which is probably a better choice for everyday users. Though I think I would die without the telephoto. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
Which is why I spent the silly extra amount of money to go to the Pro.
I bet the average user,
I
imagine the average non-photographer user doesn't have a great sense of when to use a portrait shot and how it compresses backgrounds, and one of the most basic things I do with the portrait camera on the iPhone that I love is anytime I'm taking a picture of a document, it's always better to punch in and pull back, because you'll get a flatter field of view where everything's less distorted.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah. And also you're probably casting less shadow on the subject.
I find if you're going to be sending documents to the IRS, it's best to use the ultra wide to scan those documents. Really screw with the
That'll be
perspective.
the middle text is one size, and then the text at the far ends of the document is half the size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great phone. If you're a couple generations old and you're a filmmaker, you're going to spend at least an extra $300 to go from the 11 to 11 Pro. Is that worth it? Well, how much would you spend on a lens, Griffin, for a camera, right? When I frame it that way, I'm like, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, I want the extra lens. So.
Well, and it's funny because it's hard for me to imagine why I would need 3 lenses on an iPhone. Like, that sounds crazy, and people, it seems like people are making fun of it. It's funny to see that on the back of a camera, but it is what I do as a filmmaker. I carry 3 primes around. Right now I'm traveling with a 12 millimeter, a 25 millimeter, and a 42.5 millimeter for exactly the same reasons.
Hey, I'm ready. Look at this. If you haven't seen a picture, it's a square on the back. The camera bump is a square, but it's got 3 lenses in a triangle pattern. I'm just saying there's room for a 4th lens.
Right.
I could use a tighter telephoto for sure.
Well, I'm wondering...
the night mode. Let me tell you one more thing.
Sorry. I want to know, when are they going to be smart and just take all 3 cameras, they take a shot at the same time and just merge all the light data? Surely that's one way to remove noise.
That's probably what Night Shot is doing in some cases. I'm sure it's shooting from multiple lenses. And the phone has a feature where you take a photo with your standard lens, right? You just take a picture, and then you realize, I was a little... You've done this before. You go into the iPhone to adjust the tilt, right? To get the horizon level or something.
Yeah.
And what happens? You end up having to crop in a little bit, right?
Right.
Because when you twist it.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to keep information from the wider camera every time you take a shot. So when you crop and tilt, it will just fill in that data with the wider shot. So you don't have to crop it all. Yeah. And it'll give you the ability to zoom out in post, so you can crop out of a shot even farther.
Yeah.
Say you cut somebody off. So I think that, they are basically starting to use multiple cameras. And they talked about in video mode, when you're shooting with one lens, The other ones are all up and running, and they have their exposure set and their focus set and their white balance set, so that you can switch between them like instantly without noticing a bunch of jumps in image quality change, because they're keeping all three running and ready to go.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, I'm excited about phones. Can you tell?
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy. I also got the new Apple Watch Series 5 because I'm a big nerd. So there that is.
I have a Series 3 that I bought last year on sale because the Series 4 was coming out. I still think it's a great watch. I don't really see a reason for me to upgrade.
So the banner feature of the Series 5 Apple Watch is the display is always on. So you can always look down and see what time it is without doing the little arm twist gesture.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And I was on a Series 1, so that was
That's
one
a
where
big
I
jump.
don't upgrade every year. Yeah, so it was a big jump for me. It's got cellular, which is cool, so I can go out without my phone and still be in contact with the world.
So I can always reach you for our next podcast episode.
That's right. Even when you're in France.
Yeah.
So are we going to talk about why you're in France? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's first thank our generous sponsor for today's episode, and then we'll get into what happened when the airline lost my luggage.
That's scary. Hey, Filmmakers is brought to you by Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business.
So here's something I did with my Squarespace website in the last couple of weeks that was useful. I taught a workshop in Cleveland at the Pixel Photo Fest, and we actually shot a recap of my presentation during the presentation. I used that as a way to kind of talk about the structure of how to shoot something and edit something. And then I wanted a way to share that with my class. Ultimately, it made sense just to build a new page on my website. So I built griffinhammond.com/pixel, and I sent all the attendees of the workshop there. In fact, you can go there if you'd like to, if you want to see this video. It was the best way for me to create a professional landing page for people to be on my domain and see my work, and then if they want to click around and learn some more about me, they can.
It's awesome. You can check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Griffin to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
So Nick, I am in Villenave-d'Ornon, France.
You're usually better with the pronunciation.
I am.
So I'm surprised you didn't practice that.
I did practice it beforehand, and then we got so deep into the episode.
Gone. Lost.
Yeah, completely gone. I'm not good at French.
Sorry about that.
So
try it again. Let's give it one more try.
Villenave-d'Ornon.
Okay.
Is where I am.
I know how to spell that. No.
You don't.
I don't.
So I'm doing a client project, and we had a 2-day shoot in Oviedo, Spain, and then we have a 2-day shoot nearby in Bordeaux and Martillac.
Okay.
And so I'm actually pretty proud of the setup I have right now for this podcast. It's a little bit more advanced than I usually do. Because I have some lighting with me, I brought 2 lights. I brought my Aperture 120D and my Westcott Flex LED, and I wanted to set them up. I wanted to compete with the sun behind me. There's a big window behind me, and so I set up these 2 lights, and I thought, if I'm going to set them up, I want the biggest diffusion I can. But I didn't bring like a big dome or anything. I actually brought the diffusion for the dome, the big sheet. And so I've actually put a lamp here on the kitchen counter. It's a big lamp with a big arm, and I'm just hanging a giant diffusion sheet and then shining both my lights through it. And I think I've landed on a pretty nice, soft
Pretty
look.
pleasing shot.
Yeah. Kind of just looks like sunlight through a window hitting me. It looks good.
So the problem is your shot already always looks better than mine, and now you've taken it to another level, so I look like garbage.
Mine's well
I'm
lit.
working
It's
with
in
like
France.
a tiny little LCD light and a window. That's all I got. I'm running incandescents to light the background, so it's a weird color. It's not good, people. It's not good.
So I shared a picture of the case that I brought on Instagram, and a bunch of people asked me, like, this looks different from your normal setup, because you know that I like to travel pretty light.
Yeah.
So for a shoot like this client really wants a very stable, highly produced look. So I brought some lighting. I brought a gimbal. I brought a slider. And so I ended up bringing the case for my Aperture 120D light kit. It's a 3-light kit that you put in this case. I actually only brought one of the lights, so it left me some empty slots. I also didn't bring any of the light stands or tripods or anything, just because I figured I could rent that stuff here, and it seems silly to lug it all around the world. But I managed to get all my lighting gear, my audio gear. I brought a Zhiyun Tech Weeble Lab gimbal to do much of the shooting, and I just threw that in the case as well. So it was a nice case to bring it, but I had to check that, obviously. And I also brought my slider. I have a Kessler crane slider that I really only use for this kind of project, for like an interview shot, just to make it look extra special. And I put it in a long, soft case, and I also checked that. And at the airport, they were like, oh, this is a weird shape. It's kind of small but long, so we're going to have to call this odd luggage and put it on a special belt. That was in JFK in New York, and then it just never made it.
You're like, oh, God.
Yeah. It just didn't come to Madrid.
We're going to put it on a special belt that makes sure it doesn't go anywhere. That way it doesn't get lost.
This was an Air Europa flight that I took from New York to Madrid, and then I got on a small Air Europa flight from Madrid to Oviedo, and it just didn't make it.
It didn't make it.
Which was annoying because I had to go through like passport control and customs when I arrived in Madrid. So I already was kind of like I had a lot of things to do before reconnecting on my next flight, and I was kind of worried that I had to stand in line and make a whole claim and everything for this. Ultimately, I couldn't believe how long it took them to get it back to me. It took them like 3 full days to find this thing in New York, get it over to Spain, get it to my hotel in Oviedo, and so it completely missed my shoot.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah.
But obviously you handled it okay without that equipment.
Well, I was excited that I would at least have it for the second shoot that we're doing here in France. But for the first one, I just missed out on it for the interview. But we found a really great spot to do the interview. And I ultimately just got a really nice wide shot that was very symmetrical and probably looked better without the movement of the slider. But that was frustrating. I'm just glad.
Gotta love it.
I'm just glad they lost the slider and not the big case full of all the lighting and everything.
So what would you have done in that case? You just would have to go rent all new equipment, like if you just showed up and none of your equipment made it. I mean, what's
I have
the contingency plan.
I have help here that is I have people that are helping me rent gear, and so I probably would have just hoped that maybe we could find some of that gear at some of the local rental places.
Sure.
But yeah, you got to be creative. That's the fun of this. Be flexible.
Well, I haven't seen any of the footage, but I'm sure it looks great.
Yeah, I wish I could share some, but it's all for a client, so I need to finish the project first before I could share any of it with you. But things are beautiful.
I know you're going to finish it lickety split.
Yeah. Do you mean that, or do you...
No, I was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
It takes you a while to get this
Sometimes
stuff done.
I'm very slow
I'm being
to
mean.
edit. Yeah.
That's okay. You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Well, what else?
I like it here. I might stay, but I do have a family at home.
Your wife might not like that.
Yeah.
Your baby might not like that.
I should get back to Peter and Amy.
Did I ever talk about how I upgraded the RAM in my Mac Mini?
No.
I upgraded the RAM in my Mac Mini myself. So I ripped open this tiny little Mac Mini and
is that
took
not
out the 8 gigs of RAM.
Is it like a lot of Macs where it's not meant to do that? There's not a door for RAM that you can just pop open.
There's not a door for RAM. Well, I'll share the pictures. You can put them up on the YouTube thing. You had to take it apart pretty good, but you know it's user replaceable RAM, though they don't recommend users do it themselves. But it's not like soldered on or anything.
Yeah.
So I now have 32 gigs of RAM on my Mac, so I'm pretty good to go for editing.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So yeah, 8 is not enough. 16 is what I'd recommend, but since I was doing the upgrade, I didn't want to have to rip it open again in another year or two, so I went straight to 32.
Maybe you can explain to me why is it that I've always heard that 8 to 16 is a huge jump in performance, and then I've looked at some people who've done benchmark tests when I was upgrading my own RAM. And it seemed like for editing, going up to 16 was really important. Going up to 32 was kind of a negligible or not that important difference between 16 and 32. Why would that be the case?
Yeah, I mean, think of the RAM as feeding the processors, right? Feeding them data as quick as they can consume it. Mm-hmm. And for most tasks, it's holding more ready to give it to the processor, but the processor can't consume it fast enough anyway. Right. So you need a buffer big enough, but once it's big enough, going even bigger, it doesn't really, the bottleneck moves somewhere else.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I think like for most people, 8 is probably fine, though. If you want your computer to last a while, I'd go to 16. But for people doing video and pro workflows, people who would buy, an iPhone Pro, 16 is definitely what I would get. And then I did 32 because when you're buying it yourself and not paying Apple prices, it's pretty cheap. So it was a fun upgrade.
That's good to know for most people. Like, you might think that going up to 64 gigabytes of RAM means that you're going to quadruple your performance, but you really won't. Because most things...
if you are someone who's doing like multiple 4K streams at once or things like that, I mean, that's when even more RAM will help, I think. Or if you're doing a lot of like After Effects or 3D modeling and things like that. Those people need more. But for what we do, 16's plenty.
Yeah. That's some good advice to end the show on.
Boom. All set. Well, my friend, enjoy the rest of your trip. Travel safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Hopefully all my bags make it home.
Maybe. Probably not.
All right.
Bye. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. See ya. Bye. We were like perfectly in sync there at the end. We both said, talk to you later, or see ya.
Did we?
I think so. Let's play it back right now and see if we're perfectly
Let's roll it back. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
See ya.
See ya.